Hey gang, so today we're looking at a fidget sent to us by Proxy EDC. It's the Cyborg, and you can get it over at proxyedc.com for $240. This is actually one of the coolest little fidgets I've played with. This is a multifunction fidget. It is magnetic, it is mechanical, it is intense. So this thing is so complex that I've actually created an animation to sort of explain a little better to you how it works. We're gonna take it apart piece by piece. Trust me, it's gonna be okay. Deep breaths. I did it, you can do it. It's really not that hard. All right, so that's enough of me talking. Let's get this under the camera and start to take apart the Cyborg. Let's go. Okay, here we go with the Cyborg from Proxy EDC. Now, this is a pretty complex little fidget here, so much so that I've actually created kind of a custom animation just to explain how this thing works. So let's look at the functionality right away. There are a few ways to use this. This has two kind of behaviors. First is magnetic, where I consider this, this is the front. This is kind of the barrel here because we've got our lanyard hole in the back. So to me, this is the front. You've got a little index groove here and a push groove for your thumb. So we have two ways to use this. There's magnetic, which is the first sort of moving it forward. Now this is kind of a weak magnet setup. This is not a strong, snappy magnet. But I don't think it's really meant to be. This is meant to just have a bit of a slide that catches. And we can see the magnets in here. So we have magnets on either side, and there is a magnet sitting at the back of this barrel. And so when it hits the magnets, we just get that catch. Now, if you go in the other direction, so as we push back, if we watch this center barrel, so there is a spring in here, and then it ratchets forward. So as we pull back, we reach a certain point where the barrel shoots back, and there's a spring that's pushing it, and then we have this little ratchet coming through. So again, it is kind of mechanical and magnetic. We got magnetic forward, mechanical back. Now you can also kind of give it a bit of a flick. So if we load it like this, you can, now you can't do that unless it's loaded here. And that's because there is a locking pin that is forced to unlock when the inner barrel kind of moves to a certain point. It unlocks the locking pin. So that pin is locked right now. It is locked in place. It's still locked in place until there. Now we've opened the pin up to a different position. So this is kind of fun. You can also reverse it. It's just not, it's not as easy to push because your thumb has to kind of move back here to grab it. You still can. So those are kind of the main ways to use it, but we're gonna open this up and have a look inside. Now, there are some moving pieces in here. So what I would recommend, and the way I open this up, is take the logo where it says Proxy EDC, and we are going to turn that over, and then we're gonna lay it down. So the Proxy EDC logo should be upside down if you're looking at it this way. So we have our little driver here. We're going to open up these 3 screws on the one side for now. Sorry for my hand being in the way. Okay, so the first side comes off. Now here's a couple things you have to keep in mind. One, there are still magnets holding this in place, so there is some resistance. Not a ton, but enough that you can't just pull it off. So again, as I always talk about, thumb, index finger pushing downwards so that when I lift this off the top, even if there's a little bit of a jerking move, it won't sort of make everything fly out of the way. Now, here's the other thing. We have our plate and we have balls in here. These balls help, obviously, this plate slide back and forth, but they get stuck in the track sometimes when you lift this off. So you have to be careful when you lift the plate off, because you might be holding it upside down and there might be a ball stuck in there and you don't even realize. Okay, so we have this plate. Now, as you can see, these magnets slide along here. So if we were to just do that, it does, the plate does stay on a bit. Not a ton, but a bit. Okay, second step. Now, if I just hold this pin down, this little rod here, because I want to keep this in place, you can see that as this moves, okay, this slide moves, what's happening is there's a spring in here. And as I move this back, now here's where I'm going to bring up the animation, okay, so that we can sort of help. You can see the animation's got a little bit of an X-ray in here so we can see what's going on. As this moves, it's compressing a spring, which is sitting in this section. This little pin is holding against the teeth, right? So it's preventing the inner barrel from sliding. But once we get to this little sort of swoop part, it pushes the little arm down, which releases the teeth, which releases the inner barrel. So now we have these teeth and we have our arm that's sitting on the other side of the teeth. That's what gives it the movement and the sound. So again, it stays in place, the arm stays in place until this little ledge here pushes the pin down. And as it does, it will allow that spring to snap, because the spring is in here right now, being compressed. So when the arm goes down, the inner barrel shoots backwards. And that's it. That's how it works. Now, though, we're going to take this apart piece by piece, because it's not that scary to put back together. So what we have is what you can see from this side. And the reason we open it up from this side is we have an arm, but we actually have another piece that's hiding on the inside. Okay, so we have our little arm here. We have our pin and we have this little spring here, which in the video is that little, we can see the little, I think it's red, the red line there covered. So this is what this little metal arm pushes this little sort of like metal spring. I'm never really sure what to call these other than a spring, but it pushes the arm up into the teeth. And that's what gives us that little ratchet sound. And there's actually a little groove in here where the arm sits. Now, so that means it's predetermined. This spring has to sit on this side, which is why I took this side off first, because I knew that this was going to be kind of hidden. So let's get our pieces out of the way here. Our bar, got our spring, and our arm. I know, this feels scary. It's actually not that bad. So on the other side, here's what's interesting. Remember, the screws screw this panel into the bottom of the frame. But this barrel is not attached to anything because it slides back and forth. Now notice when I lifted it, I was very careful because again, we have balls on the other side. So let's take those out just because we don't want those, you know, we don't want anything happening to them. And then we also have this little kind of a striker plate here. Nice little detail. Now, I can also just take this side off, but there's no benefit to it. It's just another one of these. So I'm just gonna leave it on for now to make the video a little quicker, but just know, I mean, you know, these are just 3 screws. This side comes off the same way. But we're gonna leave this because it does help give us, for one, it lets us, lets this sort of sit flat against something. And it's also gonna be a good starting point. So I would say if you're gonna take this apart, leave this piece on. This is, we can also see in here, this is the side that the rod kind of pushes into or rests in. So when this rod sits in here, and then we have this spring like this, and then this little plate with the indent sits like that. So together, when the whole thing is working properly, this just moves up and down. And then when we want this to go back on, now this gets a little tricky with the balls inside, but really that's all we want, right? So now I've taken this apart a few times, so I'm pretty comfortable with it at this point. So the last piece we have to look at is what is doing this, right? The spring. So remember, when this mechanism is working, we can push this back, and then we get this, that action. And that action is happening. Now this is kind of a tricky one because it's tricky to put it back together, which is why we're gonna do this together, okay? You and me, let's just walk through it. Don't worry, because this does come with extra bearings, these little balls, I should say, and 2 extra springs. So I guess at some point, if the spring kind of starts to lose its tension a little bit, there's a replacement. Okay, so the way to get this out is we just do that. Now you can see right away, as soon as I open it, there's a spring and it just came flying out. So that's also why it's always a little tough doing these videos, because you're doing something slower than you normally would and it's a little hard to pay attention, but we're still there. Okay, so in the video, as you saw, there was this little post. Now that's the reason I made the animation, I should say animation on video, is because it's really hard to get in there and show you this. But when this is together, okay, now what I love too, is just so many magnets. See the magnets here? They connect inside. Which is just so cool. So when this opens up, okay, so remember we had it like this, slid back, and then it shoots forward. So as this is sliding backwards, that little space in here where the spring sits, because the spring sits inside here, okay, we will be placing the spring in here, like this. So when this sort of top slide moves back, we are compressing the space that the spring sits in, because the spring is in here, remember. So as this slides back, it's compressing the spring, and then when the little arm opens up, this shoots backwards. So that gives us our whole little like kind of ka-chunk feeling with, that's a good word, right? Ka-chunk. So the trick here is putting this in. And I say it's a trick, it's not really a trick, but you just have to be kind of careful, right? So what I've found is the easiest way to do it is to set this end of the spring in here first. So it's sitting there, and then we just want to push it against here. And then once that's in, just want to slide it a little bit. And that's it. So as long as your spring is sitting in here, and you'll know it sits by getting this action. As long as you can get this action, then you know the spring is sitting there properly. And that's it. So we have our barrel. Now let's get our main sort of housing back here, and we'll just start reassembling. So we'll put our pin in, our little pin there. Take our little spring. If there's an official name for this type of spring, please let me know. And then remember that this inner edge, that's where this little arm sits. So see how I'm closing it? Close it first so that you can kind of slide this on and in place. And that's it. Oh, and then it does this sometimes. And again, this is the problem, right? When you're kind of trying to do something on camera, you're not really paying attention. It's also really tough to sometimes to get this stuff when you're filming straight down or recording. It's not film. There we go. So with this in, okay, I want to make sure that's in place. And then we'll just get 2 of these balls in here. Now, actually, let me be smart about this. And then this just goes right on. And see, then everything else kind of just stays there. Now you have to be careful because this still wants to push out, right? That little arm still wants to kind of work its way out. So don't let this come out too much or that little spring arm is going to shoot upwards. Get our extra balls in here. Okay, now everybody's in. Now, the way you can test it is just squeeze hard. That's it. And you know it's working. And then you wipe the sweat off your forehead and you put these screws in as quickly as you can, knowing that you have successfully disassembled and reassembled the Cyborg. This thing, the movement on this is great. Really well designed, really well thought of. There really isn't anything I don't like about this. Now, the one thing it did come with that we can talk about for a second is this little glass here. Come on. So this little glass breaker tip, you can replace this little barrel here. It just screws right out and this screws in. I tried it for a bit, wasn't crazy about it. I didn't like it because, you know, when you're using it, you're doing this. And I found that I was always pushing into this little glass breaker. So it's interesting. It's a design choice. I think it's more aesthetic than anything. And some people may like it. It just, that part, I'm not a fan of that. I just kind of like it here. Now, I do know Proxy EDC mentioned that there's, I guess, there are going to be accessories and things coming out for it. And this is threaded right here. So that makes me very curious to see what will come or why. Why is this threaded? What is the plan for this? Because that's kind of neat. Either way though, this is such a fun fidget. It is heavy, it's stainless steel, but it's rugged. This is definitely, this is the closest to, I don't know, finding something cool when you were a kid, something cool in your you know, in like your dad's toolbox or something that just had this neat little ratchet springy feel to it. That's what this is. This is very solid, heavy. The lanyard would probably be good. I just don't have an extra one right now, but I think the lanyard would actually be kind of a nice addition to it if you had something that looked good. But I don't know, maybe it'll take away from the aesthetic. I'm not sure. All right, gang, so that is the absolutely complete breakdown and reassembly of the Cyborg from Proxy EDC. Okay, gang, thanks for watching.